Father doesn't tell you how to live. He lives and he lets you watch him do it. Welcome back to the Athletic Dad Podcast. I'm your host, CT. Let's rip. I do have a few apologies I believe I need to say, and I have recognized in my bias towards performance training that I have spoken poorly multiple times about group fitness training, specifically the facilities that I tend to bring up just as, in my mind, I guess the general leaders of the group fitness field are Orange Theory and Burn Body Boot Camp. And I have to apologize because I don't have any beef with either of these facilities. I don't have any beef with any individuals who go to these facilities. I will always support people on their fitness journey, no matter which type of training they select to do. Who am I to decide what fits best for somebody else? Who am I to decide what helps a mother of 3 kids feel better and more capable when she shows up for her family? Who am I to be able to decide if someone who's had a ton of success in group fitness, who am I to be able to decide and say that they're doing it wrong? Objectively, the things that they are doing, if they are making progress towards their fitness and health goals, are correct. It's not that I'm talking negatively about any of the individuals who are involved in training at these facilities or the coaches or the businesses or the business model. I think that's all excellent because we are supporting people to be the best versions of themselves. And as long as people are doing that, I have no reason to say if they're doing it wrong, as long as it's working for them. But when I bring up these specific facilities, I'm more saying them as the general model of group fitness. And I'm saying it from my personal experience. And I totally understand how people could hear me talk poorly about Orange Theory, for example. People who go to Orange Theory and have a lot of success with Orange Theory and then hear me saying how bad Orange Theory is. And I do want to apologize for that because I don't mean it like that. I say these facilities because they are well known. And most people, when they think about Orange Theory or when they think about Burn Boot Camp, they understand the style of training they do at some level. And I talk about that through my lens and through my experience in group fitness from 2011 to 2013, which were neither of those facilities. So when I'm saying people are saying these things about Orange Theory, I'm using Orange Theory as the general idea, the general style of high intensity interval training. So I apologize to anyone who thinks I'm talking negatively about either of those facilities. I don't mean to do that. Again, I am 110% in support of anybody pursuing fitness and having progress at those facilities. And if you are having progress with that, don't stop. Keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep making healthy choices. Keep making the tough decisions of getting out of bed early to go and train or going after work late when you don't want to and going to train. Please continue to do that. I want to be here to offer another option for individuals who have only done that style of training, but I don't mean to talk poorly about these facilities, and I do apologize for that. For, I would say, over a decade now, I've been really intentional and really thoughtful and tried my best to be very consistent at meditating. I had success in 2014 in my professional career when I started doing a lot of mental training, a lot of meditation, a lot of time spent thinking about plays and going over situations of the game in my mind every evening. I would spend a lot more time doing it the evening before the game and even on game day and up until kickoff. And what I recognized about being really intentional about mental performance training and meditation was that when I got in tough situations on the field and had success, I almost felt like I had been there before. I almost felt like I'd seen it before, like I'd ran that play or I've heard that play call hundreds of thousands of times. And I really do believe that meditation and mental performance training were huge in my career. And ever since then, I've, like I mentioned, been really intentional about trying to do it as often as possible. I've talked before on podcasts, and this one specifically, that it used to be 5, 10, sometimes 15 minutes a day. Now we're closer to, I'll be lucky to get 3 minutes of intentional deep thought. I start my morning off with 10 to 30 seconds of a meditation of positive affirmations, of gratitude practice. And after I get ready and I walk my dog in the morning, it's usually dark, it's quiet, it's usually before 5 a.m. And when we walk, I keep the phone off and I spend a little more time in deep thought. Again, just trying to figure out what my intentions are for the day, what my goals are for the day, how I want to show up as dad for the day, how I want to show up as a husband, how I want to show up as a brother, how I want to show up as a coach, how I want to show up as a leader, how I want to show up as a friend. And I really feel like that gives me a lot of positive momentum going into that day. And recently, over the last, our daughter's 7 months old now, over the last 4 to 5 months or so, a question keeps coming up in these meditations, in these walks, in these deep thoughts. And the question that keeps coming up is, are you a good dad? And I think at surface level, everybody who is a present father would say, yes, they are a good dad. And I believe wholeheartedly that I'm trying my best to be the best dad possible. But sometimes situation comes up and thoughts come up that I have to almost check myself and make sure I'm being intentional for the rest of the day in these moments to be present with my daughter and to respond to my wife in ways that a great father would, and respond to my family and friends in a way that a great father would, and change the activities that I'm doing based off of things that a great father would do. And even though I don't think I can ultimately be the judge of if I'm a good dad or not, I think time will tell. I think that's a decision that my daughter will be able to make, and I think that's a decision that my wife will be able to make, and I think that's a decision that my family will be able to make. But as I'm thinking about this and as I'm considering this, as I'm changing lifestyle habits and daily routines around things that great fathers would do, a thought comes up pretty frequently that I am 100% in, even if the answer to the question that I'm asking myself of if I'm a good father or not, I'm not 100% confident in the answer, but I am 100% confident in this. And that is that I am learning every single day how to be a better parent. I know to show up as the best father possible, that it is very important that I remain capable for our baby and for my family. There's a certain power about being out in public, knowing that you're prepared for anything, that you are capable in any situation, and that you are prepared to respond the right way in any situation. And that thought is something that leads in the direction of confirmation for me to answer the question of if I'm a good father or not. And I also see a lot of parents out in public who I don't believe could confidently say that they are prepared for every situation and capable of doing anything that they need to do. And I don't necessarily blame the parents, but I feel for their children. I feel for the children who don't get the opportunity to grow up in a household where their father is capable of doing any and every physical task. And again, it's not a massive knock on these fathers because I know what it takes and I know what goes into fatherhood. And I understand how easily fitness, health, strength, conditioning can move down the priority list. But it's something that I recognize for sure. And it's another massive reason why I so much enjoy being a father and why I enjoy working with fathers specifically. Because if we can change a father's life in a positive way, it can only affect his children in a positive way. And I think that's a pretty important thing to think about as a father. I try to speak pretty often about my dad because obviously he's the only dad I've ever had and the only dad that I've known as well as I know him. And I know he's done his very best and I know he's done a great job of raising all of his kids. And I have a relationship with him that I won't ever have with anybody else on this earth. So again, I'm a bit biased there. I think that's an understatement. I think about a lot of times what I learned from him, and I made a post before my daughter was born that I wanted to talk about a little bit. Because I think these are important thoughts when it comes to gyms and training and exercise and fitness, because a lot of what we see on social media and a lot about what we hear tends to talk about the physical benefits that you get from training, which is obvious that people would talk about that. After doing it for 15 years, the physical is not as interesting to me as the mental benefits that you get from training. And the reason I'm still able to be intentional and as consistent as possible and as consistent as ever with my training now as a 38-year-old husband and dad is because I understand the psychological benefits of training. But my story goes back 25 years ago. And I remember specifically, I was leaving my buddy Ryan's house. Ryan was a very good football player who lived in our town, very well known already in 8th grade as a high-level football. I played on travel teams with him growing up, and then we were in rival middle school teams. He was the running back. I was the running back on my middle school team, running back, wide receiver, defensive back. You know how it is in middle school. You kind of just go everywhere. But he played running back and he played safety. And I remember him being incredibly talented, and he was just an awesome person. We spent a ton of time together. And 25 years ago, I remember leaving his house from a sleepover, and his dad said to Ryan, he said, "Hey, we're going to start training. We're going to start lifting today." And I remember him pulling out a book that was gym training for dummies back when those books were popular. And I remember thinking, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what's in that book. I wonder what they talk about. I wonder what those guys are going to talk about when they go down and start exercising. And my dad picked me up that day from Ryan's house, and I told him the story, and he looked at me and he said, "Well, I think it's time for you to start training." And I've talked multiple times about how my dad has had an exercise routine for forever. He was training before it was cool. He was exercising and strong and big and buff before being big and buff was cool. And so he obviously knew plenty about training, but we hadn't trained together before. I had no interest in it. So that day we went down to the basement. We sat on this very little bench to bench press. We used a bar that would bend if you put anything over 25 pounds on each side. We had a little 4-way machine where you could do dips, chest press, lat pull down, and I believe a leg extension of some sort. And we went into the basement and we trained. And I remember being tired from it and thinking, oh, this is hard. This is something that people do. This is something that you do all the time. And it wasn't the physical change that brought me back to the basement the next day. It was the psychological benefits that I received. And it was the opportunity to spend more time with my dad doing something that he loved. And I knew if he loved it, that it was something that if I stuck to and I committed myself to, that it was something that I would love. And we did that consistently 3 days a week until I was a junior in high school. When I was a junior, I was able to drive. So that's when my best friend Steve would pick me up at 5 a.m. from our house, and we'd go to the high school gym and we'd lift at 5:30, and then we'd clean off and change and be ready for first period. But for 3 to 4 years there, I was training with my dad. And when I reflected on this over the last few years, and when I was training and as I was playing professional sports and as I was coaching, I remember thinking that he knew at that time how to train for sports, how to train for performance, how to train to be the best athlete you possibly could. And I thought that was the reason that he was training me. Because again, Ryan, as a high-level 8th grade football player, which is kind of an oxymoron, but as an 8th grade football player who was talented and had a big future ahead of him, if he was training, then it meant that I was going to train. And my dad was showing me how to train. So that meant he was showing me how to train so I could beat out Ryan and beat out other players on the team. But when I became a dad years later, I finally realized that that training had nothing to do with improving my performance on the field. I received that benefit as I got stronger. I got more confident. As I got stronger, I could jump higher. As I got stronger, I could sprint faster. As I got stronger, I put those physical qualities and those mental qualities together and was able to perform better and ultimately be a better athlete. But that wasn't the reason that we were down there exercising. That wasn't the reason we were downstairs training. That wasn't the reason that after practice, after sports practice, I would change into my workout clothes and we would go downstairs in the basement and we would train until dinner and then go back upstairs and have to clean off and wash our hands because the dumbbells were rusty and the barbell was rusty and we didn't smell great. All of that wasn't to improve my play on the field. I realized that he was teaching me how to be a strong father and how to be a leader and how to ultimately become the person that I'm supposed to become. Because I learned how to squat, I learned how to bench press, I learned how to row, I learned how to hinge, but I also learned commitment, integrity, consistency, empathy, accountability, grit, respect. The weight room and the gym taught me all of those things. And those are all qualities that I hope to teach our daughter. And those are things that I think about very often when I think about helping her become the best person she can be. So I am forever in debt to my dad for that, Again, not only the physical benefits that I received from it, not only the incredible memories that I received from it, but the mental and personal benefits and qualities that I learned from it. So I'm so lucky to have had that experience. I didn't get to it last time, so I want to talk a little bit about it now. I want to talk about programming, general athletic performance focused programming. And I think you have to start with why you want to achieve certain goals, what your goals are, why you want to train, why you want to do something that's hard and takes away from your discretionary time and doesn't make you feel great in the moment and tests your ability to delay gratification. I think you've got to have a pretty solid reason why you want to start that, because it's not an easy thing. If it were easy, then the average body fat percentage of an adult would not be more than the average body fat percentage of a pig, which is a crazy statistic. If it were easy, gyms would be overflowing. If it were easy, there'd be a gym on every corner, like there's a Starbucks and like there's a Dunkin' Donuts and like there's a McDonald's. But it's not easy. And so I get why people don't do it. But I think if you're going to get into it, you should have a pretty good foundation and understanding of why you want to do it. So from there, we have to look at time constraints. We have to look at what we feel comfortable doing. We have to look at any past injuries. We have to look at time that we can dedicate to it. We have to look at facilities and equipment that we have access to. So there's a lot of context that goes in with this, but generally speaking, my advice for individuals who are either novice and completely new to the weight room or have plenty of years of experience in the weight room, whether you are a competitive high-level athlete or whether you are an adult training for longevity, I truly believe that all of these principles are the same. So I believe you have to build your programming around exercises that train the most muscle groups efficiently, that allow you to train said muscle groups through deep, full ranges of motion, and exercises that allow you to progressively overload for a long duration of time. And so the exercises that check all of those boxes are known as compound movements. So these are going to be most of the time your barbell movements. So you're looking at a barbell squat, you're looking at a barbell RDL, barbell deadlift, barbell bench press, barbell incline press, barbell overhead press. You can do dumbbell variations, kettlebell variations of all of these, but we're talking about progressively overloading for decades. Then in my mind, the barbell is the best piece of equipment to be able to use. Because then once you get so strong that you put so much weight on the barbell that you can't fit anymore, then you've won, right? Then you can, whatever, I don't know, stop exercising and start pursuing something else. You've won. Once you're lifting over 600 pounds, well, I guess then you just go to a different gym where they have different size plates and you get smaller plates and then you're able to lift more. But that's how you're going to build your programs out. That's how you're going to build out your weekly, monthly, yearly programming. But when it comes down to the specific day, you're going to pick one of those compound movements. So let's use the example of a 3-day training cycle. That seems to work the best for me. Anytime I try to add a 4th or a 5th or a 6th day, I end up not being as intentional, not being as excited to get to the gym, not training as hard, making it more of a chore. But I recognize when I'm able to train consistently 3 days a week, I go into the gym with fire. I'm excited about it. It's something I look forward to. I'm very efficient. I just get in, work as hard as I possibly can, get out. But we're going to look at a 3-day training split. If you are interested in longevity, health, performance, and I'm saying basically the opposite of, let's say, a bodybuilding style training. If you're doing that, you'd be 4, 5, 6 days a week anyway. So if we're looking at 3 days a week, those are the goals that we're generally looking for. So you're going to take one of those days, that first day of the week, and you're going to do either a upper body dominant compound movement or a lower body dominant compound movement. I love starting off my week with heavy squats. So I choose a heavy bilateral squat variation and I work to either a top set of 5, a top set of 3, or a top single. And sometimes I work to all of those in the same session. Heavy set of 5 until you can't 5 anymore, then a heavy set of 3 until you can't 3 anymore, and then a heavy single until you can't. Again, this is somebody with decades of training experience. So I have a bit more variation than I would necessarily give to somebody who's just getting started. But that first day is going to start with a lower body compound movement, a squat variation of some sort. It's going to allow you to load this movement pattern heavy if you're using a barbell. If you're super new to the movement, dumbbells are great. Like we said, kettlebells are great. Higher reps are great. But there is something about getting under a heavy barbell and actually feeling what it feels like to have to brace and breathe properly and cycle your breaths between reps and really dial in positions, controlling all three phases of the lift through the eccentric, the isometric, and the concentric. I like how a heavy barbell teaches an individual these qualities. So you're going to start that first week with a bilateral squat variation, and then you're going to pair that heavy bilateral squat variation with a bilateral jump variation. So I like using exercises that are vertical in nature and pairing a vertical jump variation with that. So a squat, I would pair a vertical jump variation with that. And then you're going to put as much effort and intent as you can into those two exercises, and you're going to do a ton of it. The next training block is then going to be an upper body compound movement. So we focused on the lower body to start, and then upper body is going to come second. Again, only 3 days a week. So we got to check a lot of boxes. We got to be efficient. Compound movements are going to be the way to go. So we're going to go upper body compound movement, and then we're going to have 2 to 3 accessory exercises along with that. And you're going to, I keep using the term check a lot of boxes. You're going to check a lot of boxes by barbell back squatting and then barbell bench pressing in the same session. So those accessories you're going to want to squeeze in are any type of mobility, flexibility exercise, any type of core exercise. And then also I like taking an isolation movement. So this is more your bodybuilding style exercise. And as long as it's not one of the main movers of that upper body compound movement, then it works well as a superset. So let's say you're doing the barbell bench press. A great option to pair with that is just the opposite movement. So now instead of pushing, we're pulling. So any type of pull up or chin up variation, any type of horizontal row variation, I think works really well with that. So if you go into the weight room and you do 5 sets of 5 barbell back squat, and you pair that with 5 sets of 5 of a vertical jump variation, let's call it a box jump, put a lot of intensity, a lot of effort into that, and then you move on and you do same sets and reps, 5 sets of 5 barbell bench press, do a mobility or core exercise, and then do a little more volume on the isolated movement. So let's say it's a single arm dumbbell row, and you do 5 sets of 12, and you're within 3 to 5 reps of failure on those rows. That right there is going to be a very well-rounded training day. A lot of times people feel like they need to add more. They need to do a lot extra, more accessories. If that takes you 45 minutes and you've got an hour, do 15 minutes of cardio. That would work well. 15 minutes in the sauna if you have the ability to go there. If you're interested in being super mobile, super flexible, then 15 minutes of mobility. But that would be a really good day 1. So then day 2, let's say it's 2 days later, right? We're starting to recover by then. I like then switching that first exercise from a squat to a hinge pattern. So it's going to be a bit more hamstring dominant when our squat pattern is going to be more quad dominant. So we're going to do a compound movement, lower body hinge pattern. So barbell deadlift is a great choice for that. Like we mentioned earlier, vertical strength training exercise paired with a vertical jump. Now that we do a hinge movement, which is hamstring and hip dominant, I like pairing that with a then horizontal jump. So a 2-foot broad jump off of 2 feet onto 2 feet, I think is a great choice there. So let's use the same set and rep scheme. So let's do a 5x5 of a barbell deadlift. Let's go 5x5 of a broad jump, and you work up to a heavy set of 5, again, where you're anywhere between 2 to 4 reps of failure. Again, there's some context there, but good general rule of thumb. 5 good working sets. I categorize a working set as when either the last, second to last, or third to last reps start to slow down. That's a good working set. So that last set of 5, you're working up to a weight where you might have 2 to 4 reps left in the tank. So that'll give you enough stimulus to create a change, but then that will also not leave you so sore and so tired that you can't come back 2 days later. And then we're going to go that second block, upper body compound movement. Because we did a horizontal push the first day, I like doing a vertical push the second day. So shoulder press variation, get a barbell, great option for that. Dumbbells, fine as well. Again, as long as we're doing those 5 sets of 5, loading to a weight that we have 2 to 4 reps left in the tank. And then again, pairing that with another core or mobility exercise. It's going to be great for longevity and health. Because like we mentioned, it's not all about muscles and strength. It's a nice piece, but that's not it. Got to be capable, got to be mobile, got to be flexible through ranges of motion. And then again, because we did a vertical push, I like vertical pulls. High pulls are great with that. Face pulls are great with that. Again, plenty of options there. But if we're just trying to keep an easy template in mind, that's a great way to go about it. So vertical push, then vertical pull. We did day 1, horizontal push, horizontal pull. Right, so then we've checked a lot of boxes by the time we get to day 3. So day 3, I like to use a variation of one of those compound movements that we used earlier for both upper body and lower body. So maybe day 3, instead of a back squat we're going to do a front squat. Front squat ultimately will not be able to be as loaded, as heavy as a back squat, so you won't get as much systemic fatigue, overall fatigue. You won't be able to get as much axial fatigue, so like loading on the spine. So physically, you should feel a little better after front squatting than you will back squatting. Again, context dependent, load dependent, things like that. Position dependent, if you're very good at the movement or if you're not very good at the movement, right? There's some fluctuation there. Or maybe even a single leg squat variation, like a split squat, reverse lunge. Both awesome options. And then you go into your jump variation. And again, that's where I like to mess around with some jumps. So you can alternate jumps. You can go single leg jumps. You can go vertical plus broad jump. You can take that opportunity to explore different types of takeoffs and landings and heights and depths. And that's a great way to approach that first block. Then that second block, again, just a variation of the horizontal press or the vertical press. So you could do an incline press, a decline press, a pause bench press. You could do the dumbbell overhead press. You could do a seated Z press. Plenty of options there. But again, a variation that won't allow you to load the barbell as heavy as you would in either a flat bench press or a standing overhead shoulder press. So good variation there. Again, core mobility, always great to work in. And then great opportunity on that last day to just find some specific muscles that you want to build up, isolate those, and hit a tons of reps at those. That's where for usually our high school guys, we'll throw in arms. For our adult guys, we'll throw in arms. Who am I kidding? Arms for everybody. Shoulders, traps, delts, back, hamstring, calves, forearms. Right? You can get a little more specific. Pump a lot of blood flow to that area through high volume. And anytime during the week, just making sure you're accumulating anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour of steady state cardio, just to make sure VO2 max is taken care of, conditioning is taken care of. And again, I'm always a huge proponent for sprints. So if you can fit that in at some point, make sure you do that. A couple of sprints. Again, sprints anywhere. They're very demanding on the nervous system, very demanding physically on your muscles and body and tissues and tendons. So 2 to 8 reps. The newer you are to sprinting, the less amount of output, the less amount of reps. The more experienced you are with sprinting, the higher amount of output, the more amount of reps you'll be able to take. But that right there is going to give you a very well-rounded training program for health, fitness, overall fitness, longevity, strength, athletic performance, aesthetics. And I had mentioned a couple of days ago to our interns, you can run a program like that for a long time and have a lot of success. So if you're just starting and want to know where to start, that's a great place to start. That's where most of my clients who I work with start, is a split like that. There's a massive component in the weight room of skill acquisition. So you want to make sure to do a lot of the things you want to get good at. Mentor of mine always says, if you want to get really good at playing the piano, you can't play the piano once a week. Got to play it 4 to 6 to 7 times a week, right? So I'm saying that in training, not meaning you have to train 7 days a week, but you need to take enough reps at these movements to get better at them. That's why I like the variation on that third day of one of those exercises of the squat. For example, we talked about the squat. We talked about the split squat, right? Both knee dominant squat variations. One is biased to one leg. One is biased to 2 legs, but it's still hammering that pattern home. And that's a really good way to approach it. Last thing I want to wrap up with is I thought about talking about somebody in my life who I think is doing a really incredible job of being a dad. It's a question that I will ask our guests when they come on, which is happening soon. But I had the opportunity to spend the weekend in New York with my wife's family, and we got to introduce our daughter to her cousins and great grandmother and aunt and her first best friends, my wife's best friends' kids. I mean, just like a really great time. And I was able to spend some time with my brother-in-law. If it were up to us, not enough time. I love the dude. I mean, he's an amazing guy. A lot going for him. We think very similar about a lot of things, but we spent a decent amount of time together, and I just want to give him some love, man. I want to give him a shout out, because my brother-in-law, Anthony, is doing a great job of being a father. He's got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it is hard, and it's hard on him, and it's hard on his wife, but they're doing a great job. But specifically, as the Athletic Dad and the host of the Athletic Dad podcast, I want to highlight Anthony Savini as just a guy doing an unbelievable job of being a father. So, Ant, shout out to you, man. I love you, bro. I know you're going to hear this at some point. So thanks for your continued support. And along with everybody else, thanks for all the positive feedback I've gotten from this and the support I've gotten from this. I'm excited to keep recording these and keep talking about what I have on my mind, and ultimately for my daughter be able to see all this when she grows up. So continue to practice gratitude as often as you can. Tell the people in your life that you love them, and live your life stimulated. I've been CT, and this is the Athletic Dad Podcast. Appreciate your support, and I will see you all on the next one.